Okay, so in World War One, Hitler actually tried to join the Austrian army, and they rejected him. So he joined the German army, which he was very glad to do. Okay, especially what that symbolized for him with the Germanic superiority, the Aryan supremacy, and so forth. Okay, so he joins the German army in World War One. He's a courier. Now he's a high school dropout, so the chances of him raising his rank up to like general or something, not going to happen. He does reach the rank of corporal, and he was a courier during World War One. So he would run messages to the front, to headquarters, to the front, and this is, it's a dangerous job. But people that served with Hitler in World War One said, he was in his element. He loved the camaraderie of the military and the structure of the military and so forth, which you would see later on with him. Okay. Now, at the end of the war, the last couple months of the war, he was caught up in a poisonous gas attack and was blinded temporarily. Good morning.
Good morning.
Glad you could join us. So, he's temporarily blinded and in the hospital when Germany surrenders. Okay, and he's angry, obviously, because if you think your people are superior, how do you lose? You know what I mean? What caused Germany to lose and surrender? Well, he blames, obviously, the generals, the government, but he also blames Jews. German Jews that did not fight with the same ferocity as other Germans did. Okay? Now, his prospects for employment after the war are not good. Okay, he's a high school dropout. Okay, so he decides to stay in the army after the war, and he's going to start. He's kind of an intelligence officer where he will spy on different political parties. Germany is chaos after the war. They don't have a new government yet. They've surrendered. They need to form a new government. And there's a lot of different political parties being formed after the war. So his job is to spy on these political parties and see what they're up to for the army to make sure, these people don't have any bad intentions or anything like that. And that's his job. Now, if you've ever been to Germany, one of the traditions is Germany is where they have meetings in beer halls. These are large, open-air, establishments where they have meetings at the beer hall. Okay? So Hitler's going around from beer hall to beer hall, visiting these political party meetings. And one day he stumbles across this party called the DAP. Okay? Who's my German people that took some German? Okay. If you're driving from Austria into Germany, does it say, welcome to Germany? The sign. Does the sign, what's it say? Welcome to what? Deutschland. Deutschland. This is the German. Now, do you remember the word for worker? Worker. Arbeiten. Okay? This is the German Workers' Party, the DAP. Okay? And Hitler listens. There's like 7 people at this political party meeting. That's it. 7 people. And Hitler likes it. He's like, oh, I like these guys. I like what they believe in because they believe in this. Remember this? Volkish nationalism, remember this? The ethnic nationalism that he had this ideology from before the war, when he was living on the streets of Vienna. This is stuff he was into, and he's like, I like these guys. So he visits a couple more times, and he's like, you know what? I'm leaving the army, and I'm going to dedicate myself to this party full time. Okay? This is 1919. So in 1919, the German Workers' Party decides to put on a rally. So they put up flyers and so forth. We're going to have a speech. 1919 in this beer hall, and 2,000 people show up. And Hitler is going to give his first public address. Morning. Water. His first public speaking address in front of 2,000 people in a beer hall. What everybody in that room figured out, including Hitler, that night, is that Hitler's really good at this, giving speeches. He starts kind of slow, calm, okay, lays out some things, then he slowly kind of builds up the energy of the room, and by the time he's done, everybody's in a frenzy. Everybody's fired up, okay? So the Nazi Party, I got one more line here at the bottom. We'll start with about 2,000 people in 1990. He's going to change the name of the party to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the NSDAP, the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Now, the name in and of itself, guys, is a lie. One of the first things Hitler does when he comes to power is he disbands all labor unions. Remember labor unions? We've talked a lot about labor unions. These are for workers that help workers make more money. Yes, better working conditions, all these things. He's the leader of the German Workers' Party. He's going to get rid of unions. It's a lie. Okay, now remember, though, fascism is when the government directs private businesses. And he's going to tell those private businesses to hire the workers. Okay, so the workers will actually benefit, especially the unemployed, from the fascism. Okay. So they start with about 2,000 in 1919. 1921, they've got about 3,300. Okay. In 1923, Hitler's going to try and take over the southern part of Germany. Okay, remember our map here? This is Czechoslovakia. This region of Germany is called Bavaria. The largest city is Munich. This is where Hitler is. This is where he spends his time, down here in Bavaria. Okay. It's got a little bit different culture than the rest of Germany. Now, the capital of Germany is Berlin, right? So, Hitler's got about 3,300 followers in his party, okay? But his party, they wear a uniform. Do the Republicans and Democrats wear a uniform? No, but the Nazis do. What do they look like? What color is the shirt? Like a khaki color, but they call them the brown shirts. You heard of the brown shirts? And yes, they have the band, the armband with the swastika on. Okay? So there's a meeting in Munich of the government, like it's a state government meeting. So this will be like Topeka. Okay? There's a meeting in Topeka with the governor there, Governor Laura Kelly, and the state legislature. And Hitler, with about a couple hundred guys, go into this meeting at the Capitol. Now, this is in a beer hall, but at the Capitol with guns, and Hitler announces at the meeting and says, listen, I'm taking over. I'm taking over this government. And they're like, no, you're not. What are you doing here? You have no right to be here. And a fight breaks out. Shots are fired. 19 people are shot. Hitler's just trying to overthrow the regional government of Bavaria, and 19 people die. He gets arrested. Hitler's actually wounded. He gets arrested and charged with what? What do you call it? Treason. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard in the past, sometimes people convicted of treason are sentenced to death. So he's put on trial for treason. He represents himself. He doesn't hire a lawyer. So he gets to put himself on the stand, and this gives him a platform. And what he does, guys, is he explains what he was doing. He was just trying to return Germany to its greatness. And get rid of this weak government that would stand up to their neighbors that are punishing them for World War I. See, the Treaty of Versailles, guys. Remember the $33 billion in reparations Germany had to pay? They also told Germany, listen, you can't have an army bigger than 100,000. Your navy is shrunk, and you're not even allowed to have an air force. They were punishing Germany for World War I. And he's like, this is wrong. We need to stand up to these people. The German people are great. And the judge likes what he hears. He gets a 2.5-year sentence, of which he serves 18 months. Now, guys, the prison cell that he's in is more like an apartment. And he's allowed to have visitors. Okay, it's a soft prison. While he's there, he writes a book called Mein Kampf, okay, My Struggle. And he lays out everything that the Nazi Party stands for and all their plans. So guys, if you want to know the playbook of the Nazis, read Mein Kampf. He lays it all out. Now, when we talk about political parties have what are called party platforms. And every issue in a party platform that a party stands for is called a plank. We'll learn this in government class. Okay? The Nazi Party platform said this. This is what the Nazis believe. This is what's in Mein Kampf. Okay? Number one. Their primary political stance was opposition to the Treaty of Versailles that had punished them. Okay? Number two, guys, this is important to remember. The Nazis hated Zelensky. The Nazis hated the communists. They hate the communists. They hate democracy. Democracy is bad. Pacifism is bad. Pacifist, that's bad. And of course, the Jews, right? And then he said that the Germans need Lebensraum, living space, living room to the east. The German people are superior. They're going to need more space. In fact, he wanted to bring German people back to Germany. Like, there's a lot of Americans now that came from Germany. He wants those Germans to come back home to the fatherland. Okay, Nicholas? Right? He wants them to come back to the fatherland. And he wants a third Reich to rule the world for 1,000 years. Okay. We play East High on Friday, right? If you had a copy of their playbook, it'd be helpful, yes? We know the playbook. Okay? So you got to read Mein Kampf. If you want to know what the Islamic State or ISIS is going to do, read the Quran, because that's their playbook. Okay? So Russia is warned very early on, 1924, okay, that if Hitler comes to power, his plan is to take Russia. And that poor little country in between Russia and Germany. Poland. Okay? Now, Third Reich. Somebody asked the question, like Mr. Ebright, if this would be the Third Reich, what were the first two Reichs? That's what was going through your head, right? You want to know? Because I was curious when I started teaching this, so I looked it up. The First Reich was Frederick the Great and the Hohenzollerns, which I don't know if you remember studying that in world history. And then the second one, I know you studied, is Charlemagne and the Holy Roman Empire. It was the Second Reich. The Nazi reign would be the Third Reich. Okay? Now they're going to rule for a few years, but not for 1,000 years. Now, a lot of people in Germany are like, this guy's wacko, man. Okay? Now, one of the things, so Hitler goes to jail. He writes the book. The judge knew how good of a speaker this guy was. And he told him, this is his probation or his parole, no public speeches until 1928. He's not allowed to do it. Okay, that's his parole. All right. Now, a lot of people didn't take this guy seriously. But here's the thing, guys. In Germany, the economy started to improve by 1924. Like, Germany was doing better. I mean, it was horrible right after the war. And then things improved a little bit. And then in 1929, what happened? On October 29th, 1929, what happened? What? October 29th, 1929, not 39. The stock market crash in America, depression sets in here and spreads around the world. So Germany in 1930 is going to fall into a depression like we do, which is great for Hitler. Hitler's ideas are radical. So you need a crisis to elect somebody like him, because this time, ladies and gentlemen, he's going to try to come to power through legitimate means, not by overthrowing the government. So if he's going to come to power through legitimate means, we need to understand how elections work and so forth in what's called a parliamentary system. You don't need to write all this down. Guys, we use what's called a presidential system in the United States. We are a republic. We're not a democracy. We're a republic. Okay? We use democratic values to elect our representatives. Okay? So our representatives are in Congress. Yes? There's 435 members of the House of Representatives. There's 100 senators. I know we haven't had government yet. And so, okay. Now, in a parliamentary system, these people would elect the president. Do these people elect the president for us? No. We have a presidential system. The people elect the president through the Electoral College. That's how we do it. Most countries, their legislature, their Congress elects the prime minister. Okay? Does that make sense? So they choose one of their own. So let's look at Germany's parliament, okay, which is called the Reichstag at the time. Reichstag. Okay? There are 639 seats. Okay, we have 535. They have 639. Okay? So how does it work? It's crazy. It's complicated in German. Okay? But the leader of Germany is called the Chancellor, not the Prime Minister. The Chancellor is like the President of the United States. They run the day-to-day affairs. Now, they also have something called a head of state. So in a parliamentary system, you have the chief executive and a head of state. The chief executive does all the work. The head of state is just like ceremonial. You got to go? Okay. I'm recording. All right, so listen. Great Britain. chief executive, the head of the executive branch is the Prime Minister of Britain. Okay? Who is the head of state in Britain? The king. Used to be the queen. She died. Yes? Queen Elizabeth died, if you didn't hear. Okay? This is about 6 months ago. Yes? Okay. Now, in Japan, Prime Minister runs the day-to-day affairs. Who is the head of state in Japan? The emperor. Do the emperor or the king of England have any power? No, they're just a figurehead. You following me here? So in Germany, to make it confusing, they have a chancellor, and their head of state figurehead is the president. That makes it confusing. I'm sorry, it's confusing. Germany does it different. Okay? So what Hitler wants to become is Chancellor of Germany. That's where the power is. You follow me? Okay. The president of Germany at the time is a guy named Hindenburg. So the Nazis are going to start trying to win seats in the Reichstag. They're going to try to come to power through legitimate means. So in 1928, before the Depression starts, the Nazis are going to get 12 seats in 1928. They got a long way to go, don't they? Yes? Now, in our system, you got to get a majority to control. So that Republicans control the House of Representatives, the Democrats control the Senate right now. Okay, they have the most seats. Okay? Now, in 1930, interesting, the Depression starts to set in. The Nazis are going to win, I think it's 100, and yeah, it's 107. Interestingly, guys, the communists win 77 seats. All right. Listen, I freaking hate communists. I hate communism. All right? The Nazis really hate the communists. There's fights in the streets. Now, the communists, they're organized, and they got flags that they're running around Berlin and Munich with these flags. What color are the flags? They're red flags. Okay, these are communists, and the Nazis got their swastikas, and they're fighting each other in the streets, and they hate each other. Okay? Picture that. 1932. As Germany really starts to fall into the Depression, the Nazis, 236. One more page. 230 seats. Okay? Now, that is 36% of the 639. Now, I want you to look up here. This is 2013 Germany and 2017 Germany. None of these parties have 51%. 51% is a majority, correct? Well, how do they have a government if none of them have a majority? This is what happens in a parliamentary system. Guys, at this point in 1932, there are 11 political parties that have seats in the Reichstag. There's 11 different parties. I know, it's great. It's hard to keep track of. It really is. But what 230 is the most of any other party. What do we call that? This is a plurality. Okay, let me explain plurality to you. Today, in the United States, Caucasians, white people, make up a plurality of the United States, no longer a majority. So 51% of the American population is not white, But the most people in this country are white, but not 51%. Does that make sense? So white people are a plurality. Okay? You understand that? This is important. Plurality, okay? The most. So the Nazis have a plurality. What do they need to do? They need to do exactly what Angela Merkel did here with the Christian Democrats. That's the CDU in 2013. She's got to join with another party, okay, or multiple parties to form a government. So this would be like, say, there were three parties in the United States, and Joe Biden had, the Democrats had a plurality, but they needed help to get to 51%. So you got to put together other parties to join yours. Okay, they don't like the SPD, so you're going to get the left and the Greens. That'll get you to 51%. So what you do is you give the left and the Greens some cabinet members, cabinet secretaries in your government. Does that make sense? So you allow them to serve in your government from other parties. That's what happens in parliamentary systems all the time. Okay. So Hitler will join with other parties. Okay. They will put pressure on the president, Hindenburg. Okay. To get to 51%, which will give him a majority. And he will become chancellor. Now, Hitler did it through legitimate means. This was all legit. What is not legit is how he goes from chancellor to dictator. Okay? In order for him to do what he wants to do, he's got to be able to do whatever he wants. So what does he need to become a dictator? Something I've been talking about in this class for, 2 weeks. He needs a crisis. He needs a crisis. Now, our Capitol building in Washington, D.C. looks like this, yes? The Reichstag doesn't look like that, but I'm going to use this as an example. This is the physical building of the Reichstag, okay? So shortly after Hitler becomes chancellor, somebody tries to burn it down. There's a fire at the Reichstag, okay? These are flames, okay? Who's trying to burn down the Reichstag and overthrow the government? Who did this? They're trying to overthrow the government. Who are we going to blame? We're going to blame the communists. It's the communists trying to overthrow the government. We've got a crisis. Now, there's this thing in the German Constitution called Article 48 of the German Constitution that allows the Reichstag to institute martial law. First thing they're going to do, guys, is they're going to arrest every member of the Reichstag that's a communist. They had over 100 seats. They're going to arrest all the communists. Now Hitler doesn't have a plurality. Hitler has a majority. They will institute Article 48, which institutes martial law, which means military rule for up to 4 years, if necessary. Hitler goes from chancellor to dictator. The next thing he will do is ban all other political parties in Germany. Germany will become a one-party state. Germany henceforth will be called Nazi Germany. And that's how he became dictator. Now, did the communists really burn down the Reichstag? We don't really know. Was it just some stooge that they hired to do it and then arrested him? I don't know. Or maybe the communists did try to burn him. Okay? Whatever happened, Hitler became dictator through legitimate means, through the Constitution. Okay? That's how it happened. Now, guys, Germany today still has multiple parties here, as you can see. Most parliamentary systems around the world have multiple parties. Okay? Our system, as I'll explain to you when we get to government, is really structured for a two-party system. Okay? We can have multiple parties, but as far as them gaining influence, third parties winning presidential races and so forth, yeah. All right, so that takes us to the next slide. I'm not going to do a ton on this, but want to get started on it. Okay, Hitler was really good at propaganda. Okay, we know he was good at giving speeches and so forth. Okay, and one of his closest allies here is this guy right here. His name's Joseph Goebbels. Got a Schrates on there. It's Goebbels. I think that's how you spell it. Okay. This guy is going to be the minister of propaganda. Goebbels will be with Hitler from the very beginning to the very end. The last day, when Hitler kills himself, Goebbels will kill himself in the same bunker. They are very close friends. In fact, Goebbels and his wife killed their own children and then killed themselves. Loyalty. Any guys ever see this movie called Downfall? They show it in German class. Yeah. They cast Goebbels really well in that movie. Like, he's got these dark eyes. He's sinister looking. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, this guy's scary. Okay. Goebbels was scary. Okay. So, Minister of Propaganda. Now, this democratic government, remember, they had 11 different political parties. This is what allowed Hitler to get into power, is this parliamentary system. Not having to have a majority, but a plurality. Okay, the German economy was in trouble. The German mark was in trouble. Okay, millions of people were unemployed. Goods were scarce. Certain things you couldn't buy. Depression left Germany leaderless, hungry, and hopeless, which really allowed for them to, the Nazis, to connect with people. He promised them, glory. He promised them jobs. He gave them hope. Okay, it's interesting when you go back and look at this, guys, at the type of people that voted for Hitler in Germany. Okay, it's a broad spectrum of people that voted for this. You had self-employed people, salaried people, professionals. Not all of them. Civil servants really didn't like him. That's for government officials. Farmers were not huge supporters of the Nazis. Manual workers, mostly Protestants. Fewer Catholics supported Hitler than Protestants. So as we get into this, guys, we'll look at how Hitler basically incorporates Nazism into every facet of society. Okay, this is shortly after they became a one-party state. So this is inside the Reichstag. Okay, Hitler is here. Okay, and everybody is saluting him. You guys know all that. You guys know the German salute to Hitler. Okay, and when you see Hitler doing this, it means he's receiving that salute. Okay. They did some redecorating in the Reichstag. You can see all the swastikas and stuff. It's all red and black. Okay. Now the persecution of the Jews, guys. If you didn't have German blood, under the Nazis' view, you couldn't be a German citizen. When you're not a citizen of a country, you don't have certain rights as if you're not a citizen, okay? And so there's going to be a process with the Jews. It evolves over time, this process with the Jews. So, guys, at the end of this all, I'll talk about what happens to the Jews from time to time, but at the end of, after we take this test, I'll spend a couple days just on the Holocaust, okay? But in 1933, when Hitler comes to power, one of the first things they'll do with Jews is force them to identify themselves. This was done through like the wearing of the Star of David on like armbands. If you owned a bookstore or a shoe store, something like that, and you were Jewish or you were a doctor, you would have to put the Star of David on your window front or on the door of your business so that Germans knew that you were Jewish and they could decide whether to, go to your store or use you as a doctor if you didn't want to. If you were like a diehard Nazi and you're like, I freaking hate the Jews, I'm not gonna buy books or shoes from the Jews. Okay. Most Germans at the beginning, you're like, this is kind of sad, but Hitler's gonna promise us jobs and so forth, so we're just gonna go along with it. And so Jews had to identify themselves, okay? And soon as we get through the 30s, they'll start to strip away that citizenship of Jews and so forth, okay? All right. Guys, the extermination of Jews doesn't, like that final solution really doesn't come in until about 1944. There are all kinds of plans for the Jews, but just the final solution of Nazi extermination of all Jews, European Jews, evolves over time. So I'll give you kind of a timeline on that as we go through, and then, as I said, when we're done.